Hi again, Mark here from Talkingbass. Today I'm going to be looking at triads, what they are, how to play them, and most importantly, how to use them. Remember, all the lesson material, including the tab, is available over at talkingbass.net, so just follow the link in the info below. And while you're there, check out the lesson map where you'll find hundreds more free bass lessons on every topic imaginable. It's all organised for ease of navigation. Then, if you want even more free goodies, sign up for the free Talkingbass membership to gain access to a ton of free, I'll say that again, free resources and downloads, like the scale reference manual ebook. So, go check it out. Okay, so what is a triad? Well, a triad is a 3-note chord, but you might be thinking to yourself, why do I need to learn about chords on bass? Well, we're not going to be playing chords like this. We're going to be playing the triads one note at a time. So let's look at that chord I just played, C major triad. If I take the notes of that chord, which we call chord tones, and I play them one at a time, we get what we call an arpeggio. So an arpeggio is an ordering of chord tones. So each of these is a chord tone of C major, and when we put them all together in an order, we get an arpeggio. Now I can play that arpeggio anywhere on the neck. At the moment, I'm playing it up here because that's where the chord was that I played. But we can take that set of notes and we can just distribute them wherever we want on the neck. So if I take that arpeggio, C, E, G, those notes, and I move them down here, that'll be a lot more useful for creating bass lines. But why do bass players need to learn these arpeggios and chord tones? Well, chord tones are absolutely essential for creating bass lines, and you'll use them in every bass line that you learn, even if you don't realize it. When we create a bass line through a chord progression, the notes that are going to work best with those chords are the notes of the chords. And by using the chord tones, we can outline the chord changes and make, cool melodic lines and sweet, sweet music. So before I get into a little music theory and chord construction, let me just show you 2 basic triad shapes for the more impatient of you out there. So we're going to look at a C major and a C minor triad. So we'll play them down here at this C, 3rd fret of the A string. First of all, let's just look at a major triad. So this is a C major triad. So we're going to have C, E, and G. Okay, so we're going to play C, 3rd fret of the A string, E, 2nd fret of the D string, and then the G at the 5th fret of the D string. Okay, and that's it. Okay, so that's what we were playing when we played that chord. So we're just playing it down here, one note at a time. So if you ever see a C major chord on a chord progression, that's a C major triad. A C minor triad sounds like this. So it's a little bit more sad and melancholy. So the notes there are C, E flat, and G. Okay, so we're starting on the C again, 3rd fret of the A string. Then we've got the E flat there at the 6th fret of the A string, and then we've got the G there at the 5th fret of the D string. Okay, so I'm just using the fingering 1st finger, 4th finger, and then 3rd finger. So with each of these triads, you can play up and down. But that's the 2 basic shapes, C major and C minor. So that's 2 basic shapes, but there's a lot more to triads than that. It pays to learn about the construction of triads because the same principles apply in constructing most other chords. This is the absolute basics of harmony, and you may just have one of those really cool light bulb moments coming up. So when we look at basic chord construction in Western music, we usually abide by something called tertian harmony. Now don't worry about the name. All you have to remember is that we build chords by stacking thirds. Now, I'm hoping that all of you have a knowledge of your basic intervals, but if not, you should. Intervals are the building blocks of music, and a good knowledge of them in all the different guises can make a massive difference to your playing and overall musicianship. I already have many lessons devoted to intervals, which I'll link to in the info below, but for now, you just need to know about 2 intervals, the major and minor thirds. So for a major third interval on a C, we have the following. Okay, so that's C to E. So you want to try to memorize that pattern if you don't know it, because it's going to be very, very useful. So that's a major third. So I've got the 3rd fret of the A string and then the 2nd fret of the D string. A major third. That would be the 3rd note of the major scale. So you want to see that interval as just a structure all its own, you know, so you've just got that little pattern there. That's a major third. Wherever you play it on the neck, that's a major third. For a minor third, we just take that major third and we take that top note, the E, and we drop it down a half step, down to that E flat, okay? So there's a major third, C to E, minor third, C to E flat. So I'm playing 3rd fret A string, 1st fret D string, okay? And again, you want to be able to see that pattern anywhere on the neck. Now, you can also learn 2 different fingerings for each interval, which comes in really useful, as you'll see in a minute. But if we take that major third, C to E, so we're playing it there on 2 strings, the A and the D string. But if we take that E, 2nd fret of the D string, and we just move it down here to the 7th fret on the A string, we have a different fingering pattern. So it's the same notes, C to E, but we can play it here on 1 string. So we have 2 patterns there. We've got a major third across 2 strings and a major third on 1 string. And when looking at it on 1 string, you might find it easy to just think of it as 2 whole steps, but you're missing the middle note out there. So, you know, if you're looking at the fret markers, you might see that fret marker, miss a fret marker, and then to the next one, okay? But however you do it, you want to be able to see that pattern on 1 string. We can also do the same thing for the minor third. So if we take that C there to the E flat, 3rd fret A string, 1st fret D string, we take the E flat, put it there on the A string, and we have 3rd fret to the 6th fret, okay? So again, that's another pattern, okay? So we now have 2 patterns. We've got the major third, and we have the minor third, okay? So now we have our thirds, let's build ourselves a triad. So let's start on that C again, 3rd fret of the A string, and what we're going to do is play a major third, okay? So C to E. Now remember what I said about tertian harmony? We're stacking thirds. So we've got a major third there, C to E. So now we're on the E, let's build another third. So this time let's build a minor third. So we're on the E there, 2nd fret of the D string, and this time let's use the minor third on 1 string, which gives us E to G. There's our minor third, E to G. So we now have 3 notes, C, E, and G. You should be able to see there that we have the major third from C and the minor third on the E. We've stacked 2 thirds together. Okay, so that's our major triad. There's a little formula for it. A major triad is a major third and a minor third. So major third, minor third on top. Okay, so that's how we build a major triad. Next, we could try it with 2 different thirds. So let's this time start on the C again, and this time we'll build a minor third. So C to E flat, I'm playing it on 1 string there. And then from the E flat, we can build another third. So let's use a major third. So from the E flat, we find a G, okay? So there's the minor third pattern, there's the major third pattern. That's how we build these triads. So we now have the major triad and the minor triad. Major triad is major third, minor third. A minor triad is a minor third and a major third, okay? And you'll recognize those from the patterns that I showed you earlier. You know, major triad and minor triad, okay? Now, as you've probably realized, we've got those 2 thirds, the major third and the minor third, so that's going to give us 4 possible combinations. We can have major third and a minor third and a major third, but then we can also have major third and a major third, or a minor third and a minor third, okay? So let's have a look at those last 2 chords. So if we start from C again, 3rd fret of the A string, let's build a major third. So we move up to the E, and then from that E, let's use another major third. So this is major third and a major third. So we have E and then G sharp, okay? So there's our major third pattern. So we've got C to E, major third, E to G sharp is a major third. So I've got the 3rd fret A string, 2nd fret D string, and 1st fret on the G string. And that is an augmented triad. So an augmented triad is major third and a major third. Finally, let's try stacking 2 minor thirds. So, C again, 3rd fret of the A string. Let's play a minor third. So we've got C to E flat, so 3rd fret to 6th fret on the A string. Now let's build a minor third from the E flat. So we're on the E flat there. Let's use the minor third moving across 2 strings. So there's our minor third pattern, and that gives us a G flat, okay? So that's the 4th fret of the D string. So minor third, minor third. And that is a diminished triad. So a diminished triad is a minor third and a minor third. Now, so far, we've just looked at those 4 triads as groups of thirds. We're stacking these thirds. But once you understand that that's just how they were created, you can start to relate the notes back to the root note. And that will make memorizing these things a lot easier. So for each triad, I can think of a root note and then a third of some kind. So let's say it's the major triad. I've got C to E, so root note and the major third, and then the G there, which is actually the perfect fifth up from the C. So root note, major third, perfect fifth. And if you were just using numbers, that'd be 1, 3, and 5. Same thing with the minor triad. So we've got the root note, the minor third, and then we've got the perfect fifth. So 1, flat 3, and 5. For the augmented triad, we've got the root note, the major third, and then the augmented fifth or sharpened fifth. So that would be 1, 3, sharp 5. And then finally for the diminished triad, we've got the root note, then we've got the minor third, and then we've got the diminished fifth, the G flat there, the flat 5. So that's 1, flat 3, flat 5. Okay? Now, because we have a formula and a pattern for each of those triads, we can just move those around wherever we want on the neck. So if we've got C major, we can move it around. A major, G major, we just move that pattern around. Okay, same with the minor. Augmented. Diminished. Wherever you want to go with that pattern. So you want to strive to see it as a fretboard pattern, but also as a formula. You want to be able to see the root note, and then that third, whatever type of third, and then a type of fifth. You know, you always want to be seeing that. So we now have our 4 triads that we created from tertian harmony. And that's pretty much it. We've used the most common fingerings to get started, but bear in mind that there are many different ways of playing arpeggios, which I've covered in many other lessons. For now, you just want to nail those first 4 fingerings, and to do this, we can try a very simple exercise, just running each triad in turn. So, for this exercise, all we're going to do is work through each of the triads in turn in the order major, minor, augmented, and diminished, and we're just going to play up and down them twice each, okay? So, I'm going to start here for a change at the C at the 8th fret of the E string, up and down the major arpeggio, then to C minor, C augmented, and C diminished. Okay, and you can obviously play that in any other key. So if I was to try G major, I could start at the G there, 3rd fret of the E string. So that's G major, G minor, G augmented, and G diminished. Okay, so if you really want to, you could work through the cycle of fourths, so you could work through C, F, B flat, E flat, A flat, etc. I've got other lessons on the cycle of fourths, I won't get into that now. But, you know, you can try it in any other key, okay? So that's just a simple exercise to get them under your fingers. And another good thing about that exercise is you can hear the difference in the sound, because that's really, really important when learning these triads. You don't want to just learn them as patterns, you want to learn how they sound. So if I was to play them as block chords, there's C major, it's a happier sounding chord, C minor, sad sound, melancholy, augmented, very sci-fi, okay, a little bit spacey, and then C diminished, it's a little bit more evil, okay, so that's how those chords sound, and then you can actually hear that in the arpeggios. So here's the major, happy, then minor, okay, so that minor third is what gives it that sad sound. Then C augmented for that spacey sound. Okay, so that sharpened fourth there gives it that sound. And then for the diminished, you know, you've got that evil sound, and it's that flat 5 in there, that tritone, that's giving it that sound, okay? So now you know your triads, but so what? I mean, what are we going to do with them? Well, earlier I mentioned how chord tones are essential for creating bass lines, and you might think that that's a bit of an exaggeration, but just think about what notes we've got in those chords. You know, in a major triad we've got the root notes, we've got the 3rd and the 5th, so if we use any of those notes in a bass line, we're using chord tones. So even if I was just playing on a single chord, just playing a root note, you know, just pedaling away, that's a chord tone. Okay? If that chord is C and I'm just playing that root note, that's a chord tone. If I was playing through a progression, playing root and fifth, again, I'm using chord tones. It's not just a pattern, a fifth pattern that tends to work over those. We're using chord tones. That's why it works, okay? So those are really, really basic examples, but the same principle applies in creating more interesting lines. So let's have a look at two really, really famous riffs. First of all, let's look at In the Midnight Hour by Wilson Pickett. So the bass line sounds like this. Okay, so it's in the key of E major. We've got the chords E major to A major, round and round. And all we've got in the bass line is an outline of those triads. So E major, so that's E, G sharp and B. You know, it's just that triad. Then A major, so A, C sharp, E. And that's it, we're just outlining the chords. But it gives it a nice melodic hook. And it's also worth mentioning that once you've learned these patterns, you know, once you can see these triad patterns there, or whatever chord it is, it'll make memorizing these bass lines a lot easier because you're dealing with familiar patterns. So if you know that that is just an E major arpeggio and then an A major arpeggio, you don't have to even start thinking of the individual notes in there. You just think E major, A major. For another famous riff, let's look at Dance the Night Away by the Mavericks. Okay, so again, we're in E major and we're moving between the chords E and B, okay? And again, all we're doing is outlining the arpeggio. So it's starting on that E there, 7th fret of the A string, coming down to the G sharp on the E string, then up to the B, so that's 4th fret and 7th fret. So it's dropped from the root note down to the 3rd and then to the 5th. And then we come up the B major. Okay, so root, major 3rd, perfect 5th, with a fingering that's a little bit different from the one I showed earlier, but like I said, there's a lot of different ways of playing them. But it's still that B triad, okay? Okay, we're just using the notes of those two triads. So those riffs used only chord tones, but that's not to say that chord tones are the only thing that you can use in a bass line. And I can hear some of you shouting, what about scales or chromatic notes? You know, Master of Puppets isn't, you know, made out of chord tones. And no, there's more to music than just chord tones, but chord tones are our foundation. The chord tones represent the harmony and are the most consonant option. But we can use other notes outside of the chords to cause dissonance, tension and interest. This is where studying harmony comes into play. We learn how to use all of this musical stuff to create music, but it all works from a foundation of chord tones. So that's it for triads for now, but remember, this is only scratching the surface. We can learn how to play triads over the entire instrument and all the different ways to apply them. If you're interested in taking this further, then be sure to check out the Chord Tone Essentials course over at Talkingbass. I work through every aspect of chord construction from triads through to more complex altered chords. All of that before showing you how to play them all over the neck and how to apply both chord tones and non-chord tones in a musical setting, from bass lines all the way through to soloing. So if that sounds good to you, just click on the card or the info below for details. Okay, remember to like this video if it's helped, subscribe to the channel, and remember to hit that notification bell. Also visit Talkingbass for all of the tab and lesson material, and remember there's a free membership you can sign up to grab all of that good stuff like the scale reference manual ebook. Okay, I'll see you next week. Thank you.